Okay. Good morning and welcome to this, the 11th meeting of 2013 of the European and External Relations Committee. Can I make the usual request that all mobile phones are switched off as they interfere with broadcasting? The first item on our agenda today is Brussels Bulletin. Are we not doing in private? We've already agreed, sorry. Just checking that our other agenda items will be in private today. Our first agenda item is consideration of the latest edition of the Brussels Bulletin, and you have it in front of you. Just looking for comments, questions, follow-up information. Roddy. Rod.
Sorry, right. I thought I was jumping the queue, but I'll be happy to start. Just with a brief comment, and obviously the very significant progress made in relation to the common fisheries policy. That's certainly a step in the right direction, particularly in regard to discards. I was quite pleased to see kind of comments of the European Parliament in relation to it.
Willie?
Thanks, Convener. Again, my attention is drawn to the page 2 there with the section on country-specific recommendations. At first sight, I was wondering just what this is, but this is really the kind of blueprint documents for countries towards recovery and so on and so forth. But the further you read in, Convener, you see there, every time I read one of these documents, you always see a clause that says the UK is not obliged to something. You know, there's always exceptions for the UK, and you'll see there it says that the UK is not obliged to avoid excessive general government deficits. You know, but the whole purpose of the CSRs is that's one of the key purposes of the CSRs, is to try to bring fiscal debt down. I wouldn't entirely say I'm in agreement with the way the UK is approaching this, since it seems to be targeting those most in need in order to achieve these kinds of recommendations there. You'll notice too, Convener, that there's a section on tackling youth unemployment, and you'll be aware, of course, the news from yesterday that Scotland has made further strides in reducing youth unemployment, and it now stands, I think, amongst the lowest in Europe. So really, my question really here is, what do we do with something like this, and how does a member state in the European Union be held to account for these kinds of things? I'm conscious that it says they are recommendations, but at some stage someone, presumably within the European Union, will be looking at the performance of any particular member state against these indicators and giving some kind of statement, annual or otherwise. And it would be interesting, I think, for us, if only as a watching brief, to keep an eye on progress, because from the criteria that I can see there, I mean, Scotland appears to be making good progress in a number of these indicators, and I think that's quite encouraging for us in Scotland. You know.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Maybe a wee bit of feedback. Katie is in the process of trying to organise a briefing on this from one of the commissioners. So hopefully in early autumn we should maybe have some feedback on that, which will give us a bit of an opportunity then to dig a bit deeper. The issue you bring up about youth unemployment is a very pertinent one, and one that I've asked Ian McKeever and Sprice to look at the youth guarantee for questions to the UK Minister when he's at our next meeting on the 27th. So I think the fact that UK hasn't signed up to youth guarantee as far as employment opportunities goes, I think that's maybe something we should explore with the UK Minister when he's here. So I think we're getting a briefing on a number of areas that we should explore with the Minister when he comes, but that's one of them. Okay, Hans Zala.
Thank you, Convener. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have now got a partial retrieve in terms of the fisheries and our demand on the European Union to support us in our quest to try and safeguard the industry in Scotland. And I see that we have met with some success. And I think it just goes to show that if we make the effort and we engage with the European Union, it can pay dividends, and I think that this is something in an area that we continue to do so. I don't think just because we've had a partial success means that we say, well, okay, job done. I think we've got a long way to go, but I think that we have nevertheless succeeded in something quite substantial, and that is we have made a mark in terms of advising and supporting the European Union in making the decisions in the right way. And hopefully they will continue to do so in the future. And I would want this committee to play its fuller role in supporting the European Union to ensure that they protect the fishing industry for the future.
Okay, thanks. Much Claire.
Thank you, Convener. It was in the area of the youth work again, and it was interesting to see, obviously Scotland's worked really hard on this issue, and it's a huge concern across Europe, especially in Portugal, Spain and Greece and some of the other countries that are really suffering. And I just wanted to say how glad I was to see that our Minister was out speaking at the conference, and Scotland is being seen as taking a lead in this area, and the work we're continuing to do with the announcement yesterday of the funding for youth jobs going to local authorities. I think, you know, we can continue to be a leader in this area, and I think that's to be welcomed.
Jamie.
There's nothing, as far as I can see, about the situation in Iceland and the Faroes regarding the mackerel and the herring, which I think is an extraordinary omission for this bulletin, considering that they have been talking about it the whole time. And I mean, this is something that the committee, I think, should ask. Just saying, are there going to be sanctions? I mean, they've said there are going to be sanctions, but they haven't said, you know, how they're going to impose them or when. And I think this is vitally important for the Scottish fishermen. And I think as a parliamentary committee, we ought to be asking these questions.
And you have, very effectively, so effectively, Ian McKeever is putting together a briefing from Spice on the very issue, so we should get that from Spice from our point of view, and then we can maybe follow up with Scotland Europa after that. And maybe just for your information, the Brussels Bulletin, the next meeting will have a bumper Brussels Bulletin, which will have a bit of a horizon scan, a forecast of what's happening over the summer as well. So we should maybe make sure with Scotland Europa that they've got that included in the next report.
Okay.
Yeah?
All right. Thank you very much.
Roddy.
A couple of additional points. I was interested in the section on higher education. That the European Commission may publish a communication later in June on the internationalisation of higher education. That section didn't in any way touch on kind of vexed issues such as tuition fees across Europe, but they did talk about the mobility of students and a kind of an uneven distribution of international students across EU countries. Would be very interested to know, it may have to wait till the publication of the communication, kind of what views there are in terms of charging tuition fees for students studying in different European Union countries. So that may be something that Europa would want to look at before the Bumper Institute or his flag up. And secondly, I was just also interested in the suggestion that the EU be drafting rules for shale gas production by the end of 2013. I imagine that will be quite a controversial area, and again, it'd be useful if there's any further background information on what's intended with that. That could be considered by the Europa, Scotland Europa.
I absolutely agree with that. I noted the shale gas section myself to bring up, but you've done it far more eloquently than I probably could have. Thanks, Roddy. Helen.
Thank you, Convener. I think when I was reading this, one of the thoughts that occurred to me was that this bulletin is full of really interesting information, but I think it sees this committee's role in a more passive role of just absorbing the information that it's sending over to us. And I just wonder if we could perhaps request through you, Convener, that we get a little bit more horizon scanning on the directives that are coming down and the directives that are proposed, because it was always envisaged when we set up the Office of European position in Europe that there would be more of that, so as it would enable the parliamentary committees to be able to get an early input into what was happening. But you know, I congratulate the officials on the information that they've given to us so far, but I just feel that that's maybe light on the directives that are coming down the line at us.
You've got a relevant point there, Helen, but one of the things that we do when we look at our priorities in the European strategy in the autumn is looking at what directives are coming down the line, because I think there's hundreds come in, and I think clerks do a good job of horizon scanning and the relevant ones for us. But you've maybe got a point of what's coming up, you know, pretty soon in Brussels that we then have to have an impact on and influence rather than be passive about. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Jamie, do you want to come back in?
We're probably missing Ian Duncan's input in that, to be honest.
Yeah, because he could give us a bit of the politics of what's happening as well, couldn't he?
You know, he had that handle, and I don't know if we ought to be employing somebody directly to do that. Convener, it's up to you know. I'm just making that point.
No, it's
because if we're having to deal with something which is a lesser document than we had before, that's not good for this committee.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Any other questions or comments on the Brussels Bulletin? No. Can we agree to make sure that it goes to relevant committees? I think some of the things we've highlighted, infrastructure should maybe be made well aware of the shale gas situation. I would suspect they would have an interest in that. Okay. Moving on to our agenda item 2, which we had agreed to take in private. So thank you very much for coming along, Leonie. I'll catch up. So, and if I could close the meeting and move into private session.